HFY Vanguard, the front line of human defiance among the stars. The fight begins now. The twin suns of Phariah hung low in the sky like molten coins, their golden-purple light spilling across the crystalline spires of the Temple of Fate. Ancient, ageless, the temple was said to have been built before Phariah itself had a name, before the first clans rose, before the stars were mapped. Its massive walls were not carved, but grown crystal veins twisting upward into vaulted ceilings that shimmered like frozen lightning. The air inside carried the faint hum of power, a low, steady vibration that seemed to pulse in time with one's heartbeat. 4-year-old Byron Tot stood in the shadow of those towering walls, his small, pale fingers clenched tightly around his mother's hand. He wasn't supposed to be here, he knew that much, even if no one had told him why. Their journey to reach Phariah had been long, and frightening shuttle transfers in the dead of night, tense silence aboard transport freighters, strangers whispering about sanctuary and the prophecy marked. Now as they stepped into the grand chamber, the whispers became reality. Phariah's priestesses moved like living shadows between columns of crystal, their sheer violet and silver robes catching the same strange light that pulsed through the walls. They were tall, statuesque, with skin the color of deep amethyst traced by silver lines that shimmered like starlight on water. Each line shifted subtly with every movement, a living map of their power and status. Byron's mother, leaned from years of running, kept her head bowed. Her voice when she spoke was tight with the tension of 3 star systems worth of fear. "Stay close, Byron." At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais, and upon it, carved from a single block of millennium-old crystal, was a cradle. It glowed faintly from within, the light bending and refracting across its faceted surface. High Priestess Moira, the most revered and feared seer on all of Phariah, stood beside it. Her golden eyes gleamed like molten metal, vertical pupils contracting as they turned toward the newcomers. Inside the cradle lay a newborn Pharian girl, no larger than Byron's forearm. Her skin was the soft violet of dawn over the mountains, already traced with the delicate silver markings of the prophecy touched. She was Amos Ferris, firstborn heir to the most powerful clan on the planet, a child whose birth had been sung of in the temples for decades before it happened. Moira's voice carried the weight of centuries. "Bring the boy." Byron's mother hesitated, but the priestess's gaze left no room for refusal. Gently she pushed him forward. His small boots scuffed against the ancient stones, the sound too loud in the vast chamber. He stopped just short of the cradle, peering down at the tiny bundle swaddled in white silk. The baby's eyes opened, golden luminous, with an unsettling awareness far beyond her hours of life. Byron felt a shiver travel through him, unmoored and strange. "Join their hands," Moira commanded. "Let us see what fate has written." Byron reached out hesitantly, his small pale hand hovering over the baby's violet one. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then their skin touched. The world exploded. The crystalline walls blazed with visions, whole futures spilling across the stone like a river of light. Images cascaded one over another faster than breath. Byron lying dead in a neon-lit alley. A violet-skinned woman standing over his body with blood on her hands. The same woman throwing herself between him and a blast of searing light, her body crumpling to save his. The two of them standing side by side as reality itself tore open around them, the void beyond, hungry and vast. Moira's voice cut through the chaos of images. "When moon and sun join in the stellar loop, when 2 lives meet before their time, one shall die to save the other. But if their hearts unite, the world will change forever." The priestesses began to chant, their voices weaving into a harmony so ancient it seemed part of the stones themselves. The sound vibrated in Byron's chest, making his small heart pound. The baby Amos began to cry. But it wasn't the thin wail of a newborn. It was deeper, older, a sound that seemed to carry knowledge no child should possess. "The timing must be perfect," Moira declared. "Too soon and he dies. Too late and she perishes. But if they meet at the appointed hour," her gaze flicked upward, catching sight of new script, twisting itself into the temple walls, fresh prophecy, writing itself in threads of light. The words shifted faster than even she could read. Byron's mother pulled him back, but he couldn't stop staring into the baby's golden eyes. Something inside him, a place deeper than memory, burned with recognition. He didn't understand, it couldn't name it, but he knew it mattered. The priestesses, as was tradition, would see to it that he remembered none of this day consciously. But somewhere in the marrow of him, it would remain waiting. Their escort moved quickly, guiding them out of the chamber and into the protective corridors of the temple's outer halls. Behind them, the chanting rose echoing through the stone like the heartbeat of the world. The twin suns cast their mingled light through the high windows, illuminating the prophecy that would shape not only two lives, but perhaps the destiny of galaxies. Byron glanced back, once a small boy stealing one last look. Amos lay still now, her golden eyes open, watching him go. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why his chest felt tight. He didn't know that in the lifetimes to come, those eyes would be both his doom and his salvation. 25 years later, the skies above Neo Sanctum glowed like a permanent sunset purple haze from the refinery towers mingling with the electric sprawl of neon signs. Rain fell in sheets, bouncing off polyglass walkways and streaking down the holographic billboards. In this city, the old and the new fought for space fragments of ancient Farian temples, wedged between skyscrapers of steel and quantum glass alleyways that smelled of incense and coolant. Captain Byron Toe crouched beside the body of Dr. Marcus Silverplane, lead researcher, on something the press only knew as Project Arc. The man lay sprawled across his holographic desk, blood pooling around the quantum interface embedded in the surface. The neon glare from the window above painted the scene in sickly blue and magenta. No signs of forced entry, reported Detective Reynolds, a broad-shouldered man whose cybernetic temple implants caught the light with every movement. Security systems untouched. Third high-profile Vic this month. Media's having a field day. Media can kiss my... Byron stopped mid-sentence, leaning closer. His enhanced vision picked out something just below the victim's jawline. A faint pattern of burns, geometric and delicate, almost invisible unless the light hit just right. He pulled out his personal scanner, an old Earth model, dented and scratched, but still his favorite. "Well, hello there." "Got something?" Reynolds asked. "These burns, they're not random. They almost look like..." Katata Marks, a voice finished from the doorway. Smooth, melodic, and carrying an accent that rolled over the syllables like velvet. Byron's head snapped up. Instinctively, his hand moved toward the blaster at his hip. Framed in the doorway stood a Farian woman, unlike any he'd seen before, and he'd seen his share. Her skin was a deep violet that seemed to hold its own light, traced with intricate silver patterns that pulsed faintly in the dimness. Her golden eyes caught every reflection, pupils narrowing like a predator's. The skin-tight black quantum fabric suit she wore was clearly tactical, though it did nothing to diminish the dangerous curve of her figure. "Agent Amos Ferris," she said, producing a holopass with the insignia of the Shikari Division, Faria's elite supernatural crimes unit. "Your jurisdiction ends here, Captain." Byron frowned. "Great, just what we need, the weird squad." Her eyes narrowed, the silver tracery along her skin brightening a fraction. "Your Earth prejudices are showing, Detective Tot. Or should I say exile?" Byron tensed. Few people knew the details behind his family's forced departure from Earth. "Lady, I don't care if you're Shikari or Shah whatever. This is my crime scene. It's ours now." She stepped forward with a grace that was too precise to be entirely natural. "Dr. Silverplane was working on classified research. This falls under Farian jurisdiction." "Like hell it does. 3 victims, all Earth scientists. My city, my rules." "Project Arc is not your city's concern," she said evenly. Byron caught the slip in her tone. "So you do know what they were working on?" Amos didn't answer directly. Instead, she crouched beside the corpse, her fingers tracing the burn marks on Silverplane's neck. As she touched them, the marks glowed faintly, reacting to her presence. "These are ritual execution patterns. Katata marks. Whoever did this, they weren't just killing him. They were erasing something." Byron watched her work, annoyed at the easy confidence in her movements, and against his better judgment, how the suit rippled across her form. He'd worked with Farians before, but this one was different, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with her badge. "Fine," he said grudgingly. "We work together. But I lead. My case, my rules." "Chaka," she replied, and when his brows furrowed, she added, "It means as you wish, Detective." Before he could respond, she reached into a hidden pocket and produced a crystal the size of a thumbnail. Its facets caught the neon light, scattering it across the walls. "We should discuss what Dr. Silverplane was really working on, and why someone would want all traces of it gone. Byron's comm unit crackled. Detective Tot, we've got another one, upper level Sector 7. Damn it. He headed for the door, then turned back to Amos. Coming, Shikari, or do ritual murders only interest you when they're cold? The silver tracery along her skin flickered amusement, maybe. After you, Jaith, it means stubborn earthling. The rain was heavier in Sector 7, blown sideways by the wind between high-rise towers. The streets gleamed awash in purple and blue light from 100 signs in languages Byron couldn't read. They followed the markers to a luxury apartment complex where the second victim, Dr. Amanda Wells, lay sprawled across a meditation pod. The same distinctive burns marked her neck. She's still warm, Byron muttered, checking the body. Killer can't be far. Security logs are wiped clean, Amos said, running her fingers along the wall. Her patterns pulsed faster. Shaketh V, the death energy is still present. The what now? Each death leaves an echo. This one. She closed her eyes, her markings glowing bright enough to cast shadows. This one was personal. Byron's scanner beeped. Got trace energy readings heading down the maintenance shaft. He drew his blaster. Feel like a chase, Shikari. But Amos was already moving, slipping into the shaft with supernatural agility. Swearing under his breath, Byron followed. They emerged into a service tunnel beneath the district, lit only by the occasional neon glow filtering through the grates above. Ahead, a shadowy figure moved with impossible speed. NSPD freeze, Byron shouted. Predictably, the suspect didn't stop. The chase wound through the undercity past ancient temple ruins, now half buried under modern tech hubs. The suspect moved like smoke, always just out of reach, yet Byron couldn't shake the feeling they were being led somewhere. Finally, they spilled into a dead-end alley. Steam hissed from vents curling in the dim light. Byron raised his blaster. Nowhere left to run. Who said I was running? The voice came from behind him. He spun. Amos stood there, but something had changed. The patterns on her skin blazed with power, her golden eyes deeper, older. Son of a Byron started, but she moved faster than thought, disarming him with a touch that sent a tingling shock up his arm. You could have just asked for my number, he quipped, masking his confusion with humor. Her smile was both sad and predatory. Trust me, detective, you wouldn't like what happens after our first date. They locked eyes and something inside Byron jolted a recognition deeper than memory. You're the killer, he said, but made no move for his backup weapon. Yes, she said, but not for the reasons you think. Then enlighten me. They were going to kill you, Byron. He stiffened at the sound of his first name on her lips. In every simulation, every possible future, they ensured your death. I was born to prevent that future. Fragments of something twin. Sons of baby's golden eyes brushed the edges of his mind, then vanished. You're insane, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Then why haven't you called for backup? Why does your heart recognize me, even if your mind doesn't? Her fingers almost touched his chest. I can prove it. A siren wailed somewhere above. Byron's gaze flicked toward the sound. When he looked back, she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of ozone and a lingering shimmer in the air. Byron stood alone in the rain-slick alley, his blaster hanging loose in his hand. His scanner beeped. A message appeared, uploaded directly into its memory. The Ark holds more than prophecies. When you're ready to learn the truth about your past, about us, come to the Temple of Twin Moons. Alone. Coordinates. A time. Tomorrow night. He should delete it. Instead, he memorized it. High above, hidden in the shadows, Amos watched with ancient sadness in her eyes. Her patterns pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Soon she whispered in her own language. Soon you'll remember everything, my Sheriff. My destined one. Byron had spent most of his career chasing ghosts, criminals who slipped through cracks in the law crimes without clear cause or motive. But the figure of Amos Ferris, standing in that alley, seared into his thoughts like an afterimage burned into a retinal implant. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the golden gleam of hers, felt the strange hum under his skin where she touched him. The coordinates she'd sent hovered in his mind like a lure. Temple of Twin Moons. He'd heard of it, half buried under Neo Sanctum's newer districts, older even than the Temple of Fate on Faria. It wasn't the kind of place you wandered into without a reason or without a death wish. Still, the rest of his shift crawled by. The bodies, the burn marks, the hints about Project Ark. Every clue pointed towards something bigger, older and a hell of a lot more dangerous than a simple string of murders. By late night, the rain had slowed to a fine mist that clung to every surface, turning neon signs into blurred halos. Byron sat in his unmarked patrol skimmer, idling outside the crime lab. Inside, technicians were running every test imaginable on the evidence from Dr. Wells's apartment. Reynolds slid into the passenger seat without knocking. Lab says energy residue on both Vicks matches Farian high-tier tech, Shikari-level stuff. Byron's jaw tightened. Yeah, guess who's rocking Shikari credentials these days? Reynolds gave him a look. You thinking Pharaoh? I'm thinking she's connected. How exactly? I'm still figuring out. You going to bring her in? Byron hesitated. Not yet. Careful, Cap. She's got the kind of eyes that'll get you killed. Byron didn't respond. He was already starting the skimmer, turning away from the lab toward the lower sectors. Yeah, he muttered, or worse. He found her before she expected him. The maintenance tunnels beneath the old quarter were a maze of dripping conduits and corroded signage where the city's polished facade gave way to rust and shadow. Byron's enhanced vision scanned every angle, picking up faint energy trails, silver heat signatures barely perceptible to human sensors. One turn, two, and then movement. Amos was there, standing in the middle of the tunnel like she'd been waiting all along. Her black suit had been replaced by something looser, darker, more like the robes he'd seen in Farian archive footage. The silver tracery along her skin dimmed, but her presence filled the space as if she owned the air itself. You're early, she said. You're avoiding arrest, Byron replied, keeping his blaster low but ready. We could call it even. Her golden eyes flickered with something like amusement. If I wanted to avoid you, detective, you would not find me. Then tell me why the hell you're killing Orc scientists. A pause. The drip of water from overhead was loud in the stillness. They were trying to lock the timeline, she said finally. Seal it so that in every possible outcome you die. My entire life I've been trained to stop that. If the choice is their lives or yours, I choose yours. That's supposed to make me feel better. It's not about how you feel. It's about keeping you alive long enough for the right moment. Byron shook his head. You're insane. Am I? Tell me, when you looked at me in that alley, did you feel it? That recognition beneath thought. He opened his mouth and closed it. Doesn't matter what I felt. It matters more than you think. It's why I sent you the coordinates. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. You've forgotten, but your soul remembers. The temple can help you see. And if I'm not interested, her expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then I keep killing until the threat is gone, and you live without knowing why. Byron holstered his blaster slowly, deliberately. Show me. They didn't go straight to the temple. She led him through parts of Neo's sanctum most locals didn't even believe existed. Arched tunnels built from a crystal so old it predated recorded Farian history corridors, where the air seemed to hum with unspent energy. At times she walked ahead, her markings faintly glowing, lighting the way. At others, she fell silent beside him, her gaze scanning the darkness with predator's patience. Eventually they reached a junction where an ancient lift, its doors corroded with centuries of neglect, waited in the gloom. Amgwas pressed her palm against the panel and the markings along her arm flared. The lift responded with a groan, cables whining as it descended into blackness. You're not afraid of much, are you? Byron asked, watching her. I fear plenty, she said, but fear is useless if it keeps you from your purpose. And I'm your purpose. Yes, she met his eyes. And more than that, detective, you're the point where every path converges. The lift doors opened onto an antechamber lit by a shaft of pale light from far above. At the center stood a circular door engraved with patterns that seemed to shift under Byron's gaze. This is it, he asked. This is where your life began, she said. Before he could ask what she meant, a sound like a whisper cut through the chamber, then multiplied, becoming a chorus. Shadows moved at the edges of the light, and Byron realized they weren't alone. Figures stepped forward. Farian warriors in ceremonial armor, their patterns geometric and rigid, lacking the organic flow of Amos's. Their faces were unreadable, but their weapons were leveled at him. Friends of yours, Byron asked. They serve the prophecy, Amos said, but not in the way I do. One of the warriors spoke, his voice metallic through his helmet's modulator. The human is not ready. Take him to the high priestess. Amos moved instantly, placing herself between Byron and the warriors. No, he comes of his own will or not at all. Stand aside. She didn't. Silver light flared from her patterns, washing the chamber in glow. The warriors hesitated. Byron glanced at her profile, jaw tight. I'm guessing this is the part where I run or fight. Neither, she said, still watching them. You walk forward, through that door, and you don't look back. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Something in her tone made him believe her. Byron stepped toward the door. The patterns engraved in its surface pulsed, matching the rhythm of his heart. He reached out, hesitated, and then touched it. Light engulfed him. The chamber, the warriors, even Amos, were gone. He stood in a vast expanse of stars suspended between two glowing orbs, one sun, one moon, each circling the other in an eternal loop. The air here wasn't air at all. It was memory, thick and alive. A child's hand reached for his. A baby's golden eyes met his own. The hum of the Temple of Fate filled the void. When he blinked, the vision shattered, and Amos was there, her face inches from his, her hand warm on his shoulder. Now you remember, she said softly. Byron's breath caught. I remember something. It's enough for now. Behind her, the door began to close. We need to leave, she said. The longer we stay, the more they'll try to trap you here. And if they trap you, I'm guessing I don't get out. No. They stepped back through as the door sealed with a sound like a final heartbeat. Byron glanced at her as they retraced their path to the lift. So what now? Now, she said, you know I'm not your enemy. I didn't say I believe that. You will. The lift creaked and groaned as it carried them back toward the surface. Each floor they passed bathed in a slightly different hue from the leaking neon above. Byron leaned against the wall, watching the dim light flicker across Amos's face. Now that fragments of the past had lodged themselves in his mind, he found it hard to look at her without feeling the echo of that boy's touch on the infant's hand, the sudden surge of prophecy. What exactly did I see back there? He asked, his voice low. You saw the day our lives were bound together, Amos replied. The day the Temple of Fate named us to one another. And the rest, the moon and sun, the loop, the stellar loop, she said, a celestial alignment that comes once in an age. The prophecy says when moon and sun meet within it, the fate of worlds hangs on a single choice. Byron let out a short laugh. And let me guess, I'm the choice. You are the variable, she corrected. The one thing the system could never predict. They emerged from the lift into the undercity, the air thick with incense from nearby shrines. Amos led him through a warren of narrow passages until they reached a hidden alcove carved from the same ancient crystal as the temple's heart. A faint hum thrummed in the walls, and holographic patterns similar to her own spun lazily in the air. This is my sanctuary, she said, and it's where you'll hear the rest of the truth. Byron glanced around. Convenient place for a confession, so go on. She touched one of the floating patterns, and the room shifted. The walls dissolved into a panoramic projection of deep space threads of light weaving between stars like an immense glowing web. In the center floated a crystalline structure the size of a small moon, pulsing with slow, deliberate rhythm. Project Arc, she said. You know it as some classified research initiative. In reality, it is a quantum engine capable of simulating every possible future in real time. Byron frowned, predicting the future. More than that, she said, her voice tightening, controlling it, guiding events along paths selected by the ones who command the Ark. Not just for one world, for entire civilizations. They call it stability. I call it a prison. Let me guess, Moira's in charge. Moira is the high priestess, yes, but she serves the architects, the core council that has guarded and shaped the Ark for centuries. They believe order must be absolute, that chaos must be eradicated. And they decided long ago that you, Byron Todd, are a threat to that order. Byron blinked. Me, I'm just a cop who likes old tech and whiskey. You are the son of Marcus and Leon, Todd Amos said, stepping closer. They weren't just scientists, they were two of the Ark's lead architects. Until they discovered the truth, the Ark wasn't just predicting futures. It was writing them. They tried to dismantle it. They failed. Byron's throat felt suddenly dry. They were exiled from Earth. They fled, she corrected, with you. Because they learned the Ark had identified a flaw in its own code, a human variable it could neither predict nor erase. That variable was you. And the Ark's solution was simple: remove the variable from every possible timeline. He tried to keep his tone steady. And where do you come in? Amos's expression softened, though her golden eyes stayed sharp. I was created as the fail-safe, trained from birth to either save you or kill you, depending on which future the architects chose to follow. Fail-safe, he repeated bitterly. So you're telling me every time you've saved me or worked with me or whatever this is, it's just part of a contingency plan? Her gaze didn't waver. They didn't account for one thing. What's that? That I would fall in love with you in every timeline. The words landed like a blow. Byron opened his mouth, closed it again. Every timeline. I've seen thousands. Watched you live and die and live again. Sometimes you make it decades. Sometimes minutes. But always, always there is something in you that fights against the path they've laid. Byron stepped back, trying to shake off the weight of it. So killing those scientists, they were working to seal the timeline permanently, she said. To erase every possibility except the one where you die before the next stellar loop. Every death bought us more time. Time for what? To reach the moment of choice. Before Byron could respond, the sanctuary's walls shuddered. The holographic patterns around them warped, twisting into jagged forms. Amos's head snapped toward the entrance. They found us. Who? Moira and the architects. Byron drew his blaster. How? She's always been able to track me, Amos said, her markings brightening. I've just been better at staying ahead. Until now. The crystal archway at the far end of the alcove flared with light. Figures stepped through, half a dozen fairy and Shikari warriors in ceremonial armor, followed by a tall woman in robes of deep violet and gold. Her golden eyes gleamed with the exact same molten intensity Byron remembered from the Temple of Fate. High Priestess Moira, Amos murmured. Child Moira, said, her voice cutting like a blade. You've strayed far from your path. Her gaze shifted to Byron. And you, the variable, finally within reach. Can't say I'm flattered, Byron muttered. Moira stepped forward, the warriors flanking her. Join us, Byron taught. Embrace your role as guardian of fate. Help us perfect the arc, and together we can bring true order to the stars. Let me guess, if I say no, you kill me. Her expression didn't change. Not kill, remove. From every timeline, pain will be irrelevant. You will simply cease. Byron glanced at Amos and her. She was meant to be your guide, Moira said, her tone hardening. But she has become your weakness. If she will not fulfill her purpose, she too will be erased. Byron felt the answer form before he could stop it. Not happening. Moira's eyes narrowed. Then you doom yourself. Maybe, he said, stepping closer to Amos. But I'm done letting other people write my story. The sanctuary shook again, this time from weapons fire outside. Moira's warriors raised their arms, projecting shimmering energy shields. A moose turned to Byron, her patterns flaring in urgent warning. They won't stop Byron. As long as the arc exists, neither of us will ever be free. Byron's mind raced. Then maybe it's time someone broke it. Amos blinked. Broke the arc. You said I'm connected to it, part of its code. If that's true, maybe I can get inside, change it. Her golden eyes widened. Byron, the feedback alone would kill me. Yeah, I figured. He gave her a crooked smile. But what's life without a little risk? The look she gave him was half fury, half something else entirely. You stubborn, impossible human. Moira's voice cut through the moment. Choose now, serve the arc, or vanish. Byron raised his blaster not at Moira, but at the crystalline patterns above them. Neither. I choose us. And as the first shot rang out, the sanctuary erupted into chaos. The sanctuary became a war zone in seconds. Shards of crystal burst from the walls as blaster fire ripped through the air, their flashes strobing the chamber in violent white blue. Fairy and shields flared against incoming rounds, projecting ripples of light that warped the very air. The hum of ancient power beneath the floor grew sharper, like the temple itself was waking to the violence. Byron dove behind a low crystal outcropping, dragging Amos with him, as energy bolts scorched the space they just occupied. Her patterns flared in warning, casting flickering silver light across his face. They'll breach every level, she said, scanning the advancing warriors. There's no holding this place. Wasn't planning to. Byron checked his blaster charge, half a clip. Not nearly enough. You said the Ark's core is connected to me. Where is it? Not here. Deep beneath the old city in the heart of the understructure. But Byron, then that's where we're going. Her golden eyes flashed. If you enter the core, it will pull you into its code. You'll be exposed to every programmed timeline at once. Most minds shatter. He smirked grimly. Lucky for us, I'm not most minds. A plasma round detonated against their cover, showering them with shards. Byron grabbed her wrist. We move on 3. They burst from cover in perfect sync. Amos's patterns blazed bright enough to sting Byron's eyes, forming a shimmering barrier that caught and deflected the incoming fire. He fired through the gap she left, precise and economical. One shot to drop a warrior, another to shatter a shield projector. Moira's voice carried over the din, amplified by some unseen tech. Stop them. The variable must not reach the core. 2 more warriors closed in from the flank, their blades igniting with a hiss. Byron ducked the first swing, countering with a shot to the attacker's thigh. The second brought his weapon down hard, but Amos caught the strike in one hand, silver patterns flaring as she twisted the blade free and sent the warrior crashing to the floor. Maintenance tunnels, she shouted. Go! The tunnels below were narrower, forcing them into single file. The air smelled of damp stone and the faint ozone tang of old energy systems. Above, the battle raged like a muffled storm, every explosion sending vibrations down through the ancient framework. They won't stop? Amos warned, her voice echoing in the confined space. Even if we reach the core, Moira will follow. Then we finish this before she gets there. You speak as though it's that simple. It's as simple as we make it, Byron said. You told me every simulation ends with one of us dying. Fine, we break the simulation. The tunnel widened abruptly into a cavern of impossible scale. Towering above them, suspended in a web of crystalline conduits, was the Ark's core. It wasn't a machine in the conventional sense, it was alive in a way. Massive lattice structures pulsed with sickly light, threads of data, moving like veins carrying corrupted lifeblood. Byron's breath caught. It's watching me. It recognizes you, Amos said, stepping to his side. You were created within its framework. You are both its child and its flaw. That makes this awkward, he muttered. Moira's voice echoed into the chamber before her physical form appeared. Step away from the core, Byron taught. You cannot destroy what you are. He turned to face her, his blaster low but steady. I'm not here to destroy myself. I'm here to free myself. Moira descended the final steps, her robes trailing like liquid gold. You think free will exists, Byron, that it is anything more than chaos dressed in noble words. Without the Ark, the galaxy falls into ruin. Without the Ark, Byron said, the galaxy actually gets a say in its own future. Her eyes hardened. Then you leave me no choice. She raised her hands. The air thickened, reality itself seeming to bow toward her. The Ark's pulsing light intensified threads of energy, reaching for Byron like skeletal hands. Byron Amos cried, stepping forward. He caught her arm. No, I need you to hold them off. Buy me the seconds I need. Her eyes searched his. If you go in there, I may never get you back. He smiled faintly. Then you'd better be stubborn enough to find me. Byron stepped into the beam of light descending from the core. Pain hit instantly, pure, unfiltered. His consciousness was ripped from his body and hurled into a vast digital ocean where every possible version of himself existed simultaneously. He saw himself die 1,000 ways in alleys, on battlefields, alone in the cold void of space. He saw Amos fall in front of him, her patterns dimming as life fled her body. He saw worlds burn, empires rise and fall. Each vision tried to anchor itself in him, to tell him this is the truth. No, he growled through gritted teeth. Not the truth, just your script. He pushed deeper past the probability layers into the base code. Here the Ark's voice spoke not in words, but in pure intent order. Control. Erase the flaw. Erase this, Byron spat and drove his will into the code. In the physical world, Amos stood her ground. Moira's warriors pressed in their weapons, clashing against the silver barrier she projected. Her patterns burned hot, the glow threatening to consume her entirely. Each strike she turned aside cost her more strength, but she didn't retreat. Moira advanced, her own markings flaring in complex patterns. You will fail, child. He will break, and the Ark will consume what remains. Then it will choke on him. Amos snarled and slammed a shockwave into the advancing line, scattering warriors like leaves in a storm. Inside the core, Byron felt the system trying to override him, shoving data into his mind, filling him with false certainties. He clung to the one thing that wasn't part of its programming, the memory of a small, violet hand and his golden eyes meeting his own with unspoken promise. This is mine, he told the Ark. You don't get to write this. He began tearing at the code, unspooling its intricate loops, severing the logic gates that linked timelines to directives. The arc screamed not in sound but in a collapse of every probability at once. Moira felt it instantly. "No," she hissed, turning toward the core. "Stop him." Amos moved to block her path. Moira struck with speed that blurred the air, their powers colliding in a cascade of light and force that cracked the chamber floor. "You were meant to serve," Moira roared. "I was meant to choose," Amos replied, her voice steady even as energy burned through her veins. Byron reached the final threads of the arc's structure, the seed from which every projection grew. It was small, almost insignificant in the immensity of the system, yet he knew destroying it would unravel the entire construct. The arc's voice coiled around him one last time. "Without me, they will suffer. Without me, they will destroy themselves." "Maybe," Byron said, "but it'll be their choice." He crushed the seed. Light erupted from the core, flooding the sanctuary with impossible brilliance. Moira staggered, her patterns flickering wildly before shattering into motes of gold. The warriors collapsed as their directives vanished. Amos shielded her eyes, searching the beam for Byron's silhouette. For a heartbeat, she saw him half-transparent, fading. She ran toward him, reaching. Her fingers brushed his, and then he was gone. The light dimmed. The arc was silent. Amos stood alone in the wreckage, her chest rising and falling, her patterns dim but steady. She closed her eyes. "I'll find you, whatever it takes." The arc was gone, not broken, erased. The pulse of its control vanished from every corner of the galaxy in an instant, leaving nothing but a void where the predetermined had once lived. For most, the change came as a strange, subtle shift. Decisions suddenly felt heavier, futures less certain. For a few, it was like stepping out from under a shadow they hadn't realized was there. For Amos Ferros, it was an ache. Not in her body, the wounds from the sanctuary battle were already sealed by her own regenerative patterns, but in the space where Byron's presence had been. She could still feel the echo of his hand in hers, the hum of his heartbeat against her palm. She kept her promise. In the weeks that followed, she searched every corner of Neo Sanctum, every archive of Farian prophecy, every timeline fragment left behind by the Ark's collapse. She found pieces, faint probability, echoes, hints of choices he might be making somewhere, but no trail that could lead her to him. The architects scattered. Moira's name became a ghost in the criminal undernets. Rumors said she'd been erased with the Ark, but Amos knew better. People like Moira didn't vanish. They waited. 1 year later, the rain still fell on Neo Sanctum, same as it always had. The neon still bled into the puddles, painting the streets in colors that belonged to no natural spectrum. The city still smelled of spice and oil and secrets. Byron Tott sat at the end of a bar in the lower levels, nursing a glass of earth whiskey. He didn't know why he liked the stuff. Something about the burn felt right, even if the bottle cost more than his weekly pay. The bartender, a cyborg with one human eye and one lazy servo, slid him another without asking. Another case closed, another stack of paperwork waiting on his desk tomorrow. Another night alone. It wasn't that Byron was unhappy. His life had a rhythm: work, drink, sleep, repeat, and it was fine. Solid. But every so often, when the neon caught just right in the window, or a piece of old Farian music drifted from an alley, he felt hollow. Like he was missing something he couldn't name. He was staring into that feeling when a voice broke the moment. "Is this seat taken, Jay?" Byron turned. She was standing there like she'd stepped out of the kind of dream you wake from too soon. Tall, violet skin, the silver tracery across her arms catching the light in subtle shifting patterns. Her golden eyes locked onto his, steady and certain. For a second, his mind went completely blank. Then reflexively, "Do I know you?" The woman's smile was slow, dangerous, and warm all at once. "Not yet," she said, "but you will." Something in his chest stuttered like a skipped heartbeat. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but something deep in him whispered, "Don't let her walk away." The bartender cleared his throat. "You ordering, lady?" "2 whiskeys," she said, sliding into the seat beside Byron. "And leave the bottle." They didn't talk much at first. They didn't need to. Every casual glance felt like a test he was passing without studying. Every brush of her hand against the bar sent a charge through him he couldn't explain. Finally, he asked, "What brings you down here?" "Looking for someone," she said without hesitation. "Friend," she tilted her head, "something like that." From somewhere far above in the glittering towers of Neo Sanctum, the storm intensified. The rain hammered down against the polyglass roofs as if the city itself were bracing for something. At the bar, Byron and the violet-skinned woman clinked glasses. Neither noticed the subtle shimmer in the air between them, an invisible pulse, faint but steady, sinking to the rhythm of two heartbeats. Some say destiny is written in the stars. Others believe it's coded in the quantum weave of the universe. Maybe they're both wrong, or maybe they're both right. What's certain is this: no system, no prophecy, no machine can account for the way two souls find each other across years, across worlds, across every possible timeline. Byron Tott didn't remember the Temple of Fate. He didn't remember the Ark's core, the battles, the sacrifice. But his heart did, and the night was young.